as with Barrett, I wanted to start off with you with the new single "Sweet Spot." First, I'm curious, when you put that together, was it always your intention to have everyone take a turn at the lead vocals with that? Because that's kind of unusual.
No, it wasn't. That wasn't the idea at first, but it was about as simple and as quick of a song as I've ever kind of come up with. Um, so the song really doesn't change the whole way through. It just kind of stays right about here.
Hmm.
I really like that about it, but it seemed and kind of a few things were coming together. I just kind of written like kind of sketched out sort of the idea for it. Um, and then when we learned that Woody was leaving, we wanted to do kind of one sort of send off song together,
Hmm.
and it seemed like thematically, "Sweet Spot" was a good one, for that. So as just it just happened to be a confluence of a few different factors. Like the song was ready, Woody was leaving, and we wanted a way to sort of uh, maybe make sort of a auditory bridge. So
Hmm.
Woody sings some, Barrett sings some, I sing some, Mike Ashworth sings some. So it's sort of a way to not quite a passing of a torch, but just sort of a way to build some continuity into the whole idea. So it seemed to work on a lot of levels. And then just as a song, I think when you have a song that is kind of stays very much the same all the way through, it kind of adds some interest if you kind of layer in different voices as it goes along.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, because I've since heard the recorded, but my first introduction was at that music festival when you guys played it
Hmm.
live, and especially live, it definitely has that because everyone is physically taking a turn, stepping forward, and such, and so it. I don't know. Again, might have just been kind of luck, but it makes it visually interesting as well as sonically interesting.
Yeah, I mean, when we first were, in the band's infancy, and even still, we still make it a part of our live shows. A lot of them. I don't think we did it at that music festival, but we'll just kind of crowd around one microphone, and it's the same sort of thing. You get that visual of you see the person who's taking the solo step up to the microphone, the person who's singing step in, or who's singing harmony. So I really like that part about the show, and um, that's it's something that our band can do. We're just lucky to have kind of different voices in the band. Um, so it's neat to sort of pass it around and see what different characters have to say. That's something we're trying to think about a little bit more.
Yeah, and interesting enough, so a couple years back, I interviewed Dave from Chatham County Line, and that was one of the things I was fascinated because, like you guys are one of the few bands I've ever seen that do that single mic thing, and he said it was they learned a lot actually from learning how to kind of self modulate and things like that. And I'm curious, did your how did it affect your style, your sound, your way of performing, as you had to learn how to all use just one microphone?
Well, I mean, it was a very precise way of learning bluegrass.
Mm.
Everything is in it very much like in its spot, and if if A moves from A's spot and starts doing something different, then whoever's if they move to doing what B was doing, then B needs to move to A, whether it's playing a lead or whether it's playing a rhythm role or some sort of backing role like that, or just laying out entirely. So when you think about it, visually, or even just how it physically functions on a single mic, you kind of you're mirroring all that you're doing musically, sort of physically with your bodies, and also with your instrument. Just like how hard or how lightly you're playing. So yeah, there's nowhere to hide any of it. So I think um, that really sort of put a real fine point on what we were trying to do. Early days as a band playing bluegrass and just being very precise with it.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. And then, in terms of songwriting, you had interesting line where you said, one of my favorite things about songwriting is that you got to keep your eyes open and take inspiration when it hits you. Um, and I'm wondering, what have been some of the awkward moments when inspiration is hit in terms of songwriting, and how did you deal with it?
Well, I mean, yeah, you have to be willing to sort of make a fool of yourself. I mean, just yesterday, I was like, we're here in this little community out here in Colorado, and I had an idea, for a way of singing a song in my head, so I had to go out and like walk around the neighborhood and sort of sing it out loud, walking around the neighborhood, and so you get funny looks, things like that. Um, but I mean, I think in general it's more, and my wife is well accustomed to it now. It's just kind of a glazing over, kind of when something's in your head, just like you're thinking about a song. You're like, yeah, yeah. Hold on, I gotta go write this down or like record this on my phone real quick or something.
Wow. Okay. And actually, it reminds me. I had read a piece about Tom Petty, and this was, of course, before things like iPhones, and he put like small handheld tape recorders in like every room of his house because he said you never know when an idea is going to strike, and you just have something to
Yeah.
record it with.
Yeah, the iPhone's a great tool for that. I remember hearing one story of John Hartford. He'd wear like a fishing vest with just tons of pockets, or something like a fishing vest with just tons of pockets, and he'd have just scraps of different songs in all the pockets. And as
Oh,
he'd think of
wow.
something, he'd pull it out and add a little something to this song, and put it back, and I love that.
Well, I mean, because the and it's funny because on 2 points. Number one, so one of the bands I work with is the Fabulous Thunderbirds, and Kim Wilson. He's always said, he said old songs or uncompleted songs. He said they're like old cars. You just keep them in the yard for spare parts, kind of thing. And
Yeah, love
Barrett
that.
suggested that you always have stuff going in different stages of completion, and so that makes me wonder, sans fishing vest, how do you keep track of all of that?
Well, I mean, a couple ways. I mean, yeah, for the most part, writing for me is really accumulation. You might have a couple good ideas and put down a bit, but I really like the process of sort of learning what a song is about. Over a period of time. That's generally is more the way it works out for me. A really fortunate position to be in as a songwriter is to be in a band, a steady working band where you can really sort of download a lot of stuff to people in the band. Um, and it can kind of be bouncing around in their heads a little bit as well. Um, so, they'll come back with something, maybe 6 months later, and they'll just like play a melody in the dressing room, and you're like, oh, they're like, yeah, that, remember that? And so, as a songwriter, that's the coolest thing in the world, is to have, talented people who you can sort of plant it a little bit in their brain and then let it gestate. And then when the time is ready, they can kind of come back to it. And that happens a lot, people might just be like, hey, remember this? What happened to this song? And I'm like, oh yeah. Yeah. I don't know what happened to that song. So it's a fine line to walk as a songwriter, and especially in the band. You don't want to be too pushy about it.
Mhm.
You don't want to like tell people like what they're going to like and what they need to do. Um, but I mean, I also always get uncomfortable too when I feel like we're not um, really actively sort of growing and pushing ourselves in that way. So it's a balance that I think we've learned to walk, but everybody can kind of tell when I start to get antsy about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, because that must be the thing within a band is like, it's great that you can welcome many ideas, but there still has to be someone that's judge and jury that says, all right, well, this is how this song is going to go. And maybe for some bands it changes from song to song depending on who the owner is.
Yeah.
um Barrett, he didn't name say what it was, but he said you guys are working on a song for the new album, and he said it started going down this really dark path, and he said that you kind of pulled them back and said, no, we have enough dark material on this one. We need to make this one a little more happy. And but I mean, it sounds like there's never any conflict with that. It's like, you know, uh,
Yeah.
uh
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, everybody has a different, way they want to sort of characterize a song. Like for me, I think I know the one Barrett was talking about. I was like, no, like listen to the chorus. This is happy. This is redeeming. Like let's like put a beat under this and make it something people can kind of move to. But
yeah.
there's also the side where it's like, but hey, look at this. We can make it this like beautiful, heartbreaking sort of dirge-like thing almost. So
Hmm.
um, yeah, I mean, I guess the final decision, I mean, is very much a democracy as far as that goes. I love having a song that we've tossed around and can play three different sort of iterations of it. Um, I think that's really neat, and I love the idea that like, you take this song and see what you can do with it, and then you take this same song and see what you can do with it, and then maybe we'll meet in the middle, or maybe we'll just say A is better and B is gone. But I think in the end it brings a lot. So I think balancing that really sort of preparedness with a song, and then also having songs where it's just totally spur of the moment. I think both those things are valuable.
Yeah.
There's a couple songs on the record that were on our last record that we did just really right in the moment, and I think Sweet Spot kind of falls into that. Nobody really knew the song that well. Half the people in the band didn't know the song at all before we came in to record it, and I think sometimes just capturing a little bit of that fresh perspective does a service to the songs as well.
Yeah. And because speaking of the last album, Arm in Arm, well, number one, you talked about during the show, as you were playing in the next life, and how you were searching for that third chorus and then or third verse, and then came up with
Hmm.
it while you were on tour in Australia. um, and it has that great turn of phrase, and I'm probably going to absolutely blow it, but it's something to the effect of uh, uh, too early to call home, too late to call sober.
Yeah, that's
um,
pretty much it. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And I'm with lines like that, which, I mean, they sound simple, but there's a lot packed into a line like that. How much of that is inspiration, and how much of that is, writing and rewriting? And I got to get this right.
Um, I think a lot of it is just and I think the reference like that being in the mindset where you can sort of catch inspiration. I think a lot of that is just being, I just try to keep myself sort of to a point of preparedness where, I feel sharp as a songwriter or just an observer. So when something like that comes along, you can say, oh yeah, that's the right thing. That means a couple things right here. And, it could mean a few things to different people. And I generally tend towards that kind of line, um,
Hmm.
where like you were saying, you can kind of unpack it or not, as much as you want. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is really sort of carving off the excess from lines and trying to get down to what it's really trying to say, and especially in a song like that, it was all about simplify, simplify, simplify.
Mm, yeah. And then with Arm in Arm, this is the first album that you guys self-produced. Um, what did you learn from that experience that you didn't know before producing, from suddenly being in the producer's chair and having that perspective?
I mean, the one biggest takeaway that I got from making that record was, when you stop listening to yourself and start listening more intently to everybody else and what's going on around you, you're probably going to be happier with what you do than if you're really listening and focusing so hard on what you're doing.
Mm,
Um, and I just remember multiple times in that session, and I don't know if it has anything to do with who's sitting in the producer's chair. But when you don't have somebody saying what's good and giving a thumbs up or thumbs down, I think just as much as you can tune in to the people around you who are making the music, then you get a pretty good idea of what was working and what's not.
Okay. Okay. And do you think that will influence how you write, how you play going forward?
I think so. I think so. I'm really right now. I mean, and it's all everything goes in phases. But right now, I'm really just want songs that like Sweet Spot just have a nice, just kind of have a nice groove to them, and like um, I don't know. I've really just been wanting stuff that you can just put on and sort of just nod your head to and feel good. And like I say, if you want to get in deep and scratch the surface and think a lot about it, you can, but you can
Yeah.
also just sort of bob your head too.
Right. Right. And and you guys do have a number of those types of songs in your repertoire, and yet um they've had all these interesting second lives, double lives, in the sense of you've played with symphonies, you've collaborated with Boys to Men, and I think number one, it speaks to the fluidity that your songs can have. Although maybe written from more of a bluegrass perspective, it's clearly resonates in different
Yeah.
ways. Um, but as a result, do you try and write with like, okay, this can be adaptable, or this is, one of those kind of songs that anyone can run with, or is that just overthinking things?
Um, I mean, I definitely am aware when I'm writing songs if I'm creating something that's going to be complicated, that's going to really involve um, a lot of different movements and parts, um, and those are the songs that seem to work best with a symphony. Honestly, like we try to, when we're doing stuff with a symphony, we really sort of tend toward the songs that just have a little bit more to them, so it just allows the symphony to sort of have a greater sort of range as far as what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in general, like the more straight ahead bluegrass songs don't really leave the symphony a lot of room to use all the textures that they have at their disposal. Um, so I do think at times, within the band, I mean that the band itself has the ability to capture a lot of those different textures. So I'll write things and say, I mean, the mandolin would sound just fantastic, kicking this off in a really aggressive way, and just have it, in my head, and whether that's where it ends up or not, I think it's helpful at the start of the writing process to kind of have that feel for the band in mind.
Yeah, yeah. And then have those experiences, with the symphony, with Boys to Men, changed how you viewed those particular songs going forward?
Hmm. Um, I don't think so, but God, the Boys to Men thing was just so, you know, it's all just really ridiculously gratifying, as
Mm-hmm.
a writer to hear like in these different situations and working to some degree. I mean, you hear Boys to Men sing a song that pretty much just wrote like riding down across town in the car, and they sing it. It's just like it's heavenly, and same with the symphony. You hear just this little idea, and all of a sudden it's the horn section playing. That's this little, inkling of an idea you had sometime, and all of a sudden it's just, you know, it's made beautiful by this unbelievable section behind you. So yeah, I mean,
Right.
those things are just so gratifying, really.
Yeah, yeah. And then also in terms of collaborating with people, with um also on Arm in Arm, the song Take My Mind, where you have Oliver Wood and Michael Bearden with you in the studio, both massively talented, both very different talents, and I don't know. I guess how does one direct or wrangle all of that into such a cohesive piece, or because I don't know, you're kind of like an abundance of riches, and I don't know how you filter that down.
Yeah, right. I mean, that was really an example of just being kind of ready to catch lightning when it struck. So we were in the studio. Michael Bearden he had been uh, with at the Boyz II Men show the night before in Nashville, and we had come and we did but Be Still Moses with a small symphony with a chart that Michael Bearden had written, and he was conducting. So he just came by the studio the next morning, and uh, we sort of cajoled him a little bit, like, oh, there's a piano, you should go sit down and check out the piano. And he kind of sat down and checked out the piano. And as he was doing it, the engineer, Brandon, took a microphone and mic'd up the piano and whatnot. And we all sort of silently slid into our seats, and got our instruments and put our headphones on and just kind of started jamming this song
Mm.
and went through it once and we're like, oh, let's do that one more time, and went through it again, and that was the song. That was, what's on the record is just a live recording, maybe the second time through it, with Michael.
Wow.
So it's really neat to be able to just sort of to be in a band that when the six of us can really speak the language and sort of see where everyone's going, then it makes it really easy to incorporate somebody else, because we can just sort of lay this foundation down and then just let them be themselves on top of that.
Right, right. Okay. And then also in terms of collaboration, so you occasionally have a second banjo player that sits in with you, named Steve Martin. Rumor has it he has a successful career as an actor as well.
All right.
Um, what I'm wondering, the banjo, especially the way you guys play, is a busy instrument. It's not just three chords here and there. How do you guys work out, how to have two banjos going simultaneously and not stepping on each other?
Right. Well, I mean, a lot of it has been sort of education for me, and like how to play the banjo, and I'm not playing the banjo how I'm used to playing the banjo. So you don't want to double what the guitar's doing. I don't want to double what the mandolin's doing. I want to do something sort of in between.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's almost like a lot of the times on the banjo, it's almost like a sort of a comping, like a what a piano would sort of do as far as comping kind of thing. And then there's times when I play harmony. I'll play harmony when he's playing a melody. But I mean, a lot of times it's just kind of recognizing that you know there does need to be some space in the music, and two banjos firing at once is in general too much. So it's been an education for me, and sort of how to build some space into my playing. Um,
Hmm.
so um, you know, Steve's his compositions are just fantastic. He writes songs like nobody else does. He's got a very unique voice on the instrument. So it's been a neat just sort of body of music to learn, especially as another banjo player, sort of watching where all this stuff comes from in his unbelievable imagination.
Yeah. And it is, what's also interesting is, it's one of those things where you realize, oh, two people playing the same instrument, you can definitely hear the different personalities in each person's playing,
Yeah,
even if they're tuned the same and all that kind. And so I guess in that way, it is kind of fascinating to hear, you know, it does sound like two, different people playing at the same time,
yeah, yeah.
uh, um, and not just like, oh, I double tracked this or something
Right,
to that
right, right,
effect.
right. Yeah, I mean, Steve has so much personality in his playing. I mean, he really does. Among a lot of banjo players and really great banjo players in the world, Steve's kind of a player who you hear and you're like, oh yeah, that's Steve playing.
Hmm.
So that's neat to work with somebody like that, and has a very different approach to it than I do. So it works.
Yeah. Um, and then another a line that caught me when I was doing research on this is I was reading up on the song "Honey on My Tongue" from Arm in Arm,
Mm-hmm.
and number one, probably one of the coolest home movies I think I've ever seen set to music. If
Oh, cool.
people watch that video, it's just really sweet, and it's like, wow, I wish I had written a song like that I could do it. But in one of your interviews about that song and the advice you've tried to instill in your kids, you said related to that, you said the advice you try to give is try to love your way through the hardest situations. And the past couple of years with the COVID lockdown has been extremely hard for musicians, I know, in the music industry in general. How did you, quote, love your way through that difficulty?
Well, I mean, a lot of that was being able to like kind of accept love, and sort of accept um, that you're in a place where um, it was hard to be your best,
Mm.
because it was really hard to feel like um, you were really able to do what you needed to do to take care of your family, to sort of even take care of oneself, and you see all the work you've been doing sort of put on hold, maybe go up in smoke to some degree, but definitely put on hold. Um, so I think as far as that, it was really, for me, it was just being able to, you know, um, accept that, when you're maybe not feeling like you're at your best, or at your best, that you're still capable of doing something that's worthy, and I really, um, that's the moments when I felt most at peace during that, were when I felt like I was still getting something out of the time, and that my time at home was not just worthwhile, but was unique and wonderful in a lot of ways.
Hmm. Yeah. And it also makes me wonder, because this band in particular has had some, as we've discussed, some unique experiences that a lot of bands don't get to get. Collaborating with artists like Boyz II Men, who are very different from you guys. Symphonies and things of that nature. And it makes me wonder, the music industry is not the most solid career path in the world. It's a challenge, and to go into it as a bluegrass band doesn't exactly increase your odds of success in that area. And so, since you didn't, obviously plan out all of these interesting things that have happened, I'm curious, what was your expectation when you started the band? Like, okay, we can definitely achieve this, and this is what we're going for.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been sort of stair stepping, uh, goals as it went along. I mean, when we started, we just wanted to be able to play a handful of songs and kind of just hang out in a kitchen or a living room, and like just play this music, because
Mm-hmm.
we were all new to it, and we were all kind of thunderstruck a little bit. So that was kind of goal one, and played a little show at Linda's in Chapel Hill or somewhere like that, and a few years down the road, we were still madly in love with it, and we're playing little gigs here and there. So, you go and win a little band competition, and take the next step and the next step. So, we were fortunate that when we started the band, we didn't really have a whole lot of obligations. We were single. We could, we were all happy to sleep on a floor somewhere. That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have sort of those barriers to committing ourselves to it. We're out of like pull something from scratch together now, and say, put all the pressure on it of, this has to sustain me, and I got to pay my mortgage. But this band, I mean, I don't know if artistically anything could like bear the weight of those expectations. So it's kind of leveled up, as we've gone on. So we've been really fortunate in that, in 20 some years, to be able to sort of keep on leveling up the band as, our lives grew more complicated, and just in general more adult, I guess. So I mean, it is a hard, you look at, a normal career track and you say, oh, well, I'd love to retire at, whatever,
Yeah.
63 years old. But I don't want to. Like, when you talk about that, it's like, what is retiring? Like, I'm not going to quit doing this. I don't want to quit working on music and playing on stage and
Hmm.
writing and this stuff. Like, retirement has no, it'd be nice to slow down at times, but in general, there's, there's no sort of end term on this. And I feel like that sort of validates the decision.
Yeah.
The fact that you
Yeah.
still love it.
But then what would you advise guys who are starting out where, you know, there's so much that's beyond your control, so again, what's the right mindset to go into all of this so that you're not crushed because you're not playing Carnegie Hall your second year as a band kind
Yeah.
of thing. um
Yeah, I mean, really, the only way I can speak to that again is try to find a situation that you absolutely love. Find people that you love doing it with, and if that's the case, if it's meant to be, you'll get there. And I think if you'll find out pretty quickly if the people you're with and working with have the same level of expectation and the same commitment to it.
hmm
Um, but I mean, as long as you love it, you continue to put in the work and the time, and that just there's no shortcut that I know to getting there other than just putting in the time, putting in the hours, whether it's playing, whether it's writing, whether it's doing business stuff, writing letters or whatever it is now that you need to get to that next step. I mean, we did it all. We hustled. We sent postcards to all the DJs. We, you
hmm
know, we gather around as a band and make press kits, to send out to people. We put in all the work on all those fronts. So um, that's really helpful as well. I mean, the business side, um, you need to pay some attention to that if you're serious about it. If it's the
yeah.
music and you're purely about the music, then maybe the business side is something that you don't need to worry about. But we're really lucky to have people in the band who are really good with that and have no illusions that that's a big reason why we're still doing it.
Okay. Okay. um and then um in terms of being sort of as prolific as you are, I was curious, and I don't know if I have, it's just a basic question. Why did you guys release 3 albums in one year instead of parsing them out? Again, going with the embarrassment of riches thing, you'd think you'd go, all right, well, maybe this will buy us a little extra time.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it felt like there were three very different albums.
Oh,
Um, you
definitely.
know, there was one album, there was the symphony album of all songs that we had recorded before. There was a live record, which we had never done before, of all the North Carolina artists live from Earl Fest. And then there was a studio album, which is kind of a more traditional album for us, just new songs. Um, so, I mean, I don't know exactly, as far as how stuff got piled up, as far as the record companies and stuff like that go. But we had a decision in the midst of COVID, do we want to put out a record in October of 2020?
Hmm.
And we made the record and we were really excited about it and felt like it was important to put this record out. And, in hindsight, it may not have been the best decision business wise, but I feel like, we weren't ready to just put that on ice and let it sit for a while. We felt like that was something we needed to say and go ahead and put it out there. So
Hmm.
um, I think, against some advice, we decided to do that in the midst of COVID. And, I don't regret it. If there were a couple people who found a song on there in the dark hours of those winters, then it was worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I don't really have a question to go with this one. I just thought, I've read a lot of things where band members describe other band members. I've yet to find one as succinct and poetic as when you described Nikki as, quote, a roving electron, which if you've seen you guys perform, it's like, wow, that is perfect, you know.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, he has the ability to light things up, and we do these Steve Martin Short shows. They have a moment that they, I guess is a Broadway term. They call it the 10:30 number, which is, 2/3 of the way through the show, you need a musical number that just gets everybody on their feet.
Mm.
And so we do a fiddle song, in the middle of the Steve Martin Short show that gets everybody on their feet. And to have somebody in the band, he's talented in a lot of other ways, arranging and thinking, just the way he thinks through a lot of stuff melodically. But just to have, somebody who just has the ability and the energy to just flip a switch and sort of light a fire on the live show is, you don't want to overplay it. It's something that we kind of try to keep in our pockets, as a card to play.
Yeah.
When we really want to have that effect. But he's a special player, and he's a special guy, and I've seen him mature like so much over the years too. Is like how to not be noticed at a time, because when you're a player like that, it can be hard to sort of sit back and let other things happen when you have, I say it like this, like most of us, when we get to a moment, musically, we might have 10 options to go in the next 5 seconds,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And for somebody like Nikki, he has 10,000 options where he's going to go in the next 5 seconds. So, I understand how it can be hard for a mind like that to sort of dial that back at times. But, I've seen him do that over the years, and it's really a great thing as an ensemble.
And then finally, that makes me wonder, you guys have had some personnel changes over the years. You're on the cusp of yet another personnel change. What, in your opinion, makes for a good ranger?
That's a great question. Well, I mean, I think first of all, it's somebody we're compatible with, somebody who, I think I can see the band started as a group of friends. So it needs to be somebody who they don't need, we don't have to be the same, I kind of prefer it if we're not all the same and from the same background and have the same views on everything. But, we need to be able to connect, and we need to know that kind of we're feeling things in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
For this next change we have coming up, we sent out, tons and tons of singers sent us demos, and it's kind of a thing. Like when you hear somebody connecting with the song, nothing else really matters. You can feel somebody's sort of heart in that moment that,
Yeah.
I want to work with this person. I want this person like up here singing this song next to me every night, because they're connecting to it the way I'm connecting to it. And that's going to make for a good band. That's going to make for great music. So it's unique because we haven't had to deal with a ton of changes, especially like kind of frontline changes in a long time. So it's a really unique one. What we're looking at now is bringing in a new voice to the band. So you need that person that you really believe in that voice, first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
And it's exciting, like a couple of these demos, you hear it and you're like, if you're moved to tears, that's a really good sign. And I think we're moving in that direction. So I'm really optimistic about it. Not quite ready to, show all the cards on it yet, but we've
Yeah.
got some cool things coming up. And yeah, I'm as optimistic for the band musically as I've ever been. So that feels like a good place, and like I said, I still love it as much as ever. And a couple of these things come to fruition, I'm probably going to love it a lot more too.
Yeah, yeah. Cool, cool. And yeah, it also makes me think a few times I've interviewed Ben Caesar, who's the drummer for Brad Paisley, and he had said something really wonderful one time where he says, I'm far from being the best drummer in the world, but I think I'm the best drummer for this particular band,
Mm,
and
mm,
that sounds like
yeah,
part of the intangible that's also what you end up looking for.
yeah, yeah. It's hard to replace. It's gonna be hard to replace somebody like Woody. But he's been
Mm,
like one of my best friends for 20 some years, and he still is. And he still will be. But I think you look at every time that you do this within a band. I mean, it's really an opportunity, and it's an opportunity to take a step forward and find like who is the best person for this band. It may not be the hottest guitar player or the person who can sing the highest. Um, but if you can find um, that something that just touches the soul of the band, then I think that's what we've always sort of leaned on as a band, and sort of where all our decisions have sort of come from. And
mm-hmm.
so I think we're aware of that sort of decision making process, and are planning on stick with that, um, as long as we can hold out.
Okay, cool. And then finally, is there anything we didn't talk about that you want to talk about? Or, maybe something like, oh, people always ask me the same questions, but what I really want to talk about is X.
um, I don't think so. I don't,
Okay.
I think we covered it all, I mean, I like I say, I mean, my favorite part of it is still being able to get up in the day and work on music, write, practice, play. I just love it all so much. So, like I say, I just feel fortunate to be able to still do that, and um, to feel like I have a place to take that inspiration with the band and go out and play with people. And it's just a lucky feeling.